The voice of God is not like the voices of this world. It does not clamor, does not shout over the crowd, does not compete for attention in the noise of the marketplace or the chaos of headlines. Instead, it is found in the stillness. The same God who spoke the universe into being with a word now chooses to speak to you not through the whirlwind, not through the fire, not through the earthquake, but through the still, small voice that whispers in the depths of your soul. This is the divine paradox, the one who thunders from Sinai, who parts seas and shakes mountains, chooses to commune with man in the silence. He waits not at the surface, but in the deep. It is in the stillness that revelation comes, but this stillness is not found on the surface of life. The surface is busy, it is loud, it is hurried and distracted. The surface is where the world lives scrolling, shouting, chasing. But the voice of God is not on the surface. It is in the deep waters, and if you want to hear him, you must be willing to leave the shallows. You must be willing to shut the door, silence the noise, turn off the distractions, and descend into the quiet places of your soul. There, where the noise of the world fades, the whisper of heaven begins to be heard. Many miss this voice because they never go deep enough. They pray, but they do not wait. They ask, but they do not listen. They seek answers, but not intimacy. But the voice of God is not heard by the hurried, and it is not received by the distracted. It is given to those who wait, those who dwell, those who seek not a word, but the Word himself. This is the ancient way, the way of the prophets, the psalmists, the saints who knew that before God speaks to the world, he first speaks to the heart. And before he sends a man to stand before kings, he calls that man to kneel before him. In the stillness, God speaks mysteries. He reveals things that cannot be learned in classrooms or sermons. He whispers truths that shake empires and awaken destinies. In the deep places, he does not just answer questions, he rewrites the questions. He reveals not only the what but the why, not only the direction but the purpose behind it. He does not only say, go, but shows you why you are made to go. He does not only say, wait, but teaches you what is being forged in the waiting. To hear the voice of God is not simply to receive guidance, it is to be changed. It is to come into contact with the one who made you. His voice does not merely inform, it transforms. It does not speak to the surface, it goes to the core. It reaches places no man can reach, and when he speaks, everything shifts. Your fears are silenced, your identity is affirmed, your wounds begin to heal. It is in that voice that the orphan is told he is a son, the sinner is told he is redeemed, the wanderer is told he is home. But this voice is not cheap, it is not casual, it does not speak to the one who gives God his leftovers. It speaks to the one who hungers, who thirsts, who longs to know not just the gifts of God, but the giver himself. The stillness is not always comfortable. It requires discipline. It requires the silencing of the inner voices, the laying down of agendas, the surrender of self. But it is in that surrender that the divine voice is heard. If you would hear the voice of God, you must leave the noise. If you would know his heart, you must find the place of stillness. It is there, in the depths, where the Eternal speaks, not as a thunderbolt from the sky, but as a whisper in your soul. And in that whisper is the power to change everything. There are moments in life when everything seems quiet, yet not in the way that brings peace. It is the quiet that feels like absence, the silence that feels like heaven has turned its face away. In such moments, prayers seem to vanish into the void. Answers do not come. The heavens feel as brass. And yet it is precisely in this silence that something holy is happening, for the voice in the depths does not always shout. It does not always speak in the ways we expect. Sometimes God's most profound words are wrapped in silence. And it is in the silence that he invites you deeper. When Moses approached the burning bush, it was in the wilderness. When Elijah stood on the mountain, the Lord was not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but in the still small voice. When Jesus withdrew to pray, it was not in crowds but in lonely places. This is the pattern. God speaks in the silence, but not all silence is empty. The silence of God is not the absence of God. It is the space where he teaches trust. It is the place where he draws the soul to lean closer, to strain its ear, to listen not with flesh, but with spirit. This is the mystery of the divine whisper. It is often clearest when everything else is quiet. The noise of the world must be stripped away. The clutter of your own thoughts must be silenced. Only then does the whisper begin to resonate, and though the whisper is soft, its impact is great. It is in this gentle whisper that God breaks chains, realigns destinies, and plants seeds that grow into callings. It is in the hidden place, in the chamber of solitude, that the soul meets its Creator not in thunder, but in breath. That voice brings discernment when logic fails. When you cannot trust what you see or feel, the Spirit gives insight that defies both. He shows you what lies beneath the surface. He reveals the motives of the heart, the traps of the enemy, the unseen hand of God working behind the scenes. And he does this not always in great visions or dramatic signs, but in the quiet witness within, a conviction, a holy unrest, a sacred assurance. It may contradict what your senses are saying, but it aligns with truth. And truth is not a concept, it is a person. That inner voice always leads you to him. This inner voice doesn't just comfort, it convicts. It doesn't flatter, it refines. It may call you to repent, to change direction, to surrender what you've been holding too tightly. It may call you to break ties with something good for the sake of something greater. And though painful, its conviction is healing, never condemning. It wounds only to bind up. It exposes only to restore. It reveals what must die, so that resurrection life may flow more freely in you. And in every correction, there is a deeper love, because the one who speaks from within is the one who gave himself for you. To ignore that voice is to walk blind in a world that demands sight, but to listen is to walk by faith, guided not by outward appearances, but by the inward witness of the Spirit. This is the calling of every believer, not to live by reaction, but by revelation, not to chase signs, but to follow the shepherd's voice. And that voice will not always lead you on easy roads, but it will never lead you astray. It is the voice that knows the end from the beginning, the path from the promise, and the cross from the crown. It is the voice that calls you to follow, not just in action, but in trust. And so, the question is not whether God is speaking, but whether we are listening. He still speaks, he always has, but his voice is reserved for those who will come away, who will quiet their souls, who will tune their spirits to heaven. For those who do, that voice will become their compass, their strength, their source. It will lead them through storms into destiny and into the presence of God himself. And that voice, once heard, once followed, will mark them forever. There is a voice in the depths of your soul that not only speaks to guide, correct, and comfort, it speaks to transform. The voice of the Spirit does not merely inform you of divine truth. It shapes you into a vessel that carries it. It is not satisfied with leaving you the same. It calls you out from the shallows of surface living and into the depths of holy communion, where identity is forged, destiny is awakened, and transformation is made real. This is not a one-time whisper. It is a continual shaping, chiseling, and refining of your inner man until Christ is formed in you. When the Spirit speaks, he speaks with purpose. Each word is like a seed, and when it is received, not just heard, but truly received, it begins to take root in the soil of your soul. It starts to change your thoughts, your desires, your reactions. You begin to see differently, feel differently, love differently, not because you are trying harder, but because something deeper has been awakened within you. The voice of the Spirit unlocks the reality of who you were created to be. It exposes the false identities you've lived under and calls forth your true name, the one heaven knows. Transformation is not instant, but it is inevitable for those who continue to listen and obey. The Spirit begins to peel away every layer of fear, every crust of pride, every lie you've believed about yourself or God. And sometimes that transformation comes through pain, through the fire, through the crushing, through the seasons where everything in you wants to give up. But even in that breaking, the voice remains, and it says, "This is not to destroy you, but to make you new. This is not the end, this is the process of becoming." The voice in the depths of your soul also reveals what you were made for. It is the voice that reminds you that you are not here by accident, that your life is not random, and that your gifts are not your own. The Spirit awakens your calling. He begins to speak of things not yet seen, assignments not yet walked in, nations not yet touched, and people not yet reached. He does not give you every detail, but he gives you enough to walk in obedience. And with each step, as you follow that voice, more is revealed. The journey becomes a walk of faith led by the whisper of God within. This transformation also separates. As the voice of the Spirit grows louder in your soul, the voices of the world grow dim. You begin to lose your taste for what once satisfied. The entertainment, the distractions, the opinions of men, all lose their grip. You are no longer shaped by the world, but by the word spoken within. And that word sanctifies, it purifies, it breaks chains and casts down idols. The Holy Spirit teaches you to live not for the temporary, but for the eternal. You begin to think with the mind of Christ, feel with the heart of the Father, and move with the boldness of the Spirit. But the voice does not only transform you for your sake. It transforms you so that you can be a voice for others. What you receive in the secret place becomes what you carry into the world. You become a messenger, not because you speak loudly, but because your life now speaks. You become a reflection of the voice that called you out of darkness and into light. You carry not just information, but impartation. Not just passion, but presence, and those who encounter you are drawn not to you, but to the one whose voice you carry. In the end, this is the greatest miracle, not just that God speaks, but that his voice changes who you are. It turns sinners into saints, orphans into sons, wanderers into worshipers. It makes the broken whole, the fearful bold, and the forgotten beloved. The voice in the depths of your soul is the voice that called light out of darkness, life out of death, and it is still speaking. And if you will listen, if you will yield, it will change everything. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. There is a deep work that happens when God is seemingly silent. It is not a punishment, it is a preparation. It is not his neglect. It is his nearness in disguise. For when God seems quiet, he is often speaking more deeply than words. He is shaping the heart, enlarging the capacity to receive, purifying motives, stripping away distractions. He is preparing the soul not just to hear a word, but to be transformed by it. He is inviting you to trust his presence even when you can't trace his voice. Many fear the silence, but it is in the silence that faith matures. Surface faith needs constant noise, constant affirmation. But deep faith learns to rest even when it hears nothing. It holds fast when the winds are still. It believes not because it feels, but because it knows. And in that knowing, something eternal is forged, a root goes down, a foundation is laid. And when the voice does speak again, it finds a soul that has been prepared, not distracted, not desperate, but ready. The whisper of God in your depths cannot be forced. It comes in His timing, in His way, but it always comes. For He has promised not to leave you as an orphan. He has promised to guide you with His eye upon you. The question is not whether He speaks, but whether you are still enough to hear. His whisper does not compete with the noise. It does not strive for your attention. It waits for your surrender. And in that surrender, in that quiet yielding, the whisper becomes unmistakable. You may not always feel Him. You may not always understand the silence, but do not mistake stillness for abandonment. The shepherd is near. The teacher has not left. He is simply teaching you to hear differently, not with the ears of the flesh, but with the ears of the Spirit. And when you hear that whisper, that voice in the depths, it will anchor you more than 1,000 loud sermons ever could. It is the voice that knows your name, the voice that called you before time, the voice that still calls today, quiet, constant, eternal. There is a voice that does not speak in sentences, a presence that communicates without sound, a knowing that bypasses reason. It is the voice in the depths of your soul. This voice is not conjured by human thought, nor controlled by emotion. It does not arise from intellect or personality. It is deeper than your thoughts, truer than your feelings, and more enduring than your circumstances. It is the voice of God, echoing through the corridors of your innermost being, reminding you of who you are, who He is, and why you were born. It is not heard with ears, but with spirit, and it is in the Spirit that you must learn to listen. This voice calls not from the surface of life, but from its center. It does not compete with the noise of the world, but waits patiently beneath it, beneath the distractions, beneath the chaos, beneath even your inner monologue. It is the voice that was speaking before the world shouted its first noise. It is the voice that was there when you were formed in the secret place. It is the same voice that spoke light into darkness and being into dust. This voice is not just information. It is identity. It doesn't simply instruct, it anchors. It tells you who you are, not according to the flesh, but according to eternity. There are times when you may feel lost, unsure of who you are or what you are meant to do. The world will offer you 1,000 names, labels based on your success, your failure, your appearance, your background, your achievements, or your lack. But those names are surface. They fade, they shift. But the voice in the depths speaks with permanence. It doesn't call you by your failure, but by your calling. It doesn't address you as you see yourself, but as God sees you. When you listen to that voice, you begin to remember who you are, not as the world defines you, but as heaven designed you. And yet, the voice is gentle. It will come as a peace that defies logic, a conviction that you cannot shake, a sense that something beyond you is moving within you. This voice does not only speak when things are clear, it speaks in the fog. It does not need clarity to speak. It brings clarity when it speaks. You may not always know what it means, but you will know it is real. It may call you to do something that makes no sense to the world. Step out, let go, forgive, wait. And when you obey, even in uncertainty, you will find that what seemed irrational is the wisdom of God hidden in mystery. This is the walk of faith, not led by sight, but by the whisper in the depths. To live by this voice is to live anchored. While the world changes, while emotions rise and fall, while seasons shift, the voice remains. It is the voice that will lead you through darkness, sustain you in the storm, restore you in your failure, and call you again and again to the path of life. It will convict you when you stray, comfort you when you weep, and commission you when the time is right. It is not just a voice, it is the presence. It is God Himself dwelling within, calling you to live not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The deeper you listen, the clearer it becomes. And when you follow that voice, you are never lost even when the path is hidden, for the one who speaks from within knows the way. There are moments in life when everything external seems to crumble. When doors close, relationships shift, hopes dim, and the noise of the world turns into silence. In those moments, when answers do not come, and prayers seem to hang in the air unanswered, it is then that the voice in the depths becomes most crucial. For it is in silence that God often speaks the loudest, not through thunder, not through earthquake, but through the still small voice. That voice is not bound to circumstances. It is not moved by your feelings. It is constant, and it waits beneath the surface for you to descend below your confusion and into communion. This is not the voice of man. It is not self, talk, or subconscious reasoning. It is not the echo of your desires or fears. It is the voice of the Spirit, speaking directly to your spirit. And it is in the valleys of life that this voice becomes clearer, not because it grows louder, but because everything else quiets down. When the external falls silent, the internal voice rises, not in volume, but in clarity. It pierces through the fog of despair with a peace that cannot be explained. It does not always explain the why, but it anchors you in the who. There are lessons that cannot be taught in light, but only in darkness. When God wants to take you deeper, He often removes the comforts and crutches. The Spirit draws you away from the familiar into the wilderness, not to abandon you, but to speak to you there, as He did with Israel in the desert, as He did with Elijah at Mount Horeb, as He did with Jesus before His ministry. The wilderness becomes the classroom of revelation. In that stillness, the voice that spoke before time speaks again, not to your ears, but to your soul. And it tells you, you are not alone, I am with you,